He didn't make a speech. He didn't hold a press conference. He simply changed the locks, figuratively speaking, and the entire British establishment felt it. Prince William has reportedly shut the door on Camilla's inner circle and opened it wide for the Middletons. No warning, no negotiation, just a decision, clean and final. And inside Buckingham Palace, they say the silence is deafening. This isn't just a family disagreement. This isn't a misunderstanding over Christmas dinner. This is a calculated, deliberate move by the future King of England, a man who has spent years watching, waiting, and learning exactly how power works inside the firm. And now he's using it. To understand why this moment matters, you have to understand what royal residences actually represent. These aren't just houses. They aren't vacation homes or guest rooms. They're symbols of belonging, of trust, of royal acceptance. When you are welcomed into Sandringham, Windsor, or Balmoral, it means you are inside the circle. You are part of the family in the truest institutional sense. And when that door closes on you, everyone notices. The British press noticed immediately. Royal insiders noticed. And the Parker Bowles family, Camilla's relatives who had, for years, enjoyed a quiet but comfortable proximity to royal life, noticed most of all. What William did wasn't loud. It was precise. And in the world of the British monarchy, precision is everything. You don't shout. You signal. And William sent a signal so clear that even those thousands of miles away could read it. The era of tolerating people he doesn't trust is over. The era of William, on his own terms, has begun. To fully grasp the weight of William's decision, we need to go back. We need to understand exactly who Camilla's family is, what access they enjoyed, and why that access was always more complicated than it appeared. Camilla Parker Bowles, now Queen Consort, did not arrive at royal life as a stranger. She had history, deep, tangled, painful history, and so did her family. Her children from her first marriage, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopez, have long maintained a visible, if carefully managed, public profile. Tom is a respected food writer and journalist. Laura lives a relatively private life. Both have attended major royal events. Both have, over the years, been present at private gatherings within royal properties. Then there are the extended relatives, cousins, in-laws, associates who orbited Camilla's world and, by extension, found themselves orbiting the royal world too. Some of these individuals had no formal role, no official title, no real reason to be inside those walls, other than their connection to Camilla. And that connection, for years, was enough. Under King Charles, who adored Camilla and fought decades to legitimize their relationship, doors that might otherwise have stayed closed swung open. Charles wanted Camilla accepted, fully, completely, without reservation. And part of that acceptance meant extending a degree of warmth, or at least tolerance, toward her family circle. William watched this happen. He watched as people he hadn't chosen, hadn't vetted, and didn't particularly trust were handed proximity to spaces he considered sacred. Royal estates aren't just buildings to William. They connect to his mother. They connect to Diana, her memory, her spirit, the summer she tried to give her sons despite everything falling apart around them. So when Camilla's relatives began appearing in those spaces, William felt it. Deeply, personally. And he said nothing. For years, he said nothing. Because he was learning. Because he was patient. Because he understood that the moment to act wasn't then, it was later. When he had leverage. When he had standing. We could make the move without it looking reactive or emotional. That moment, according to sources close to the palace, has now arrived. And the Parker Bowles extended circle is feeling every bit of it. If this story is new to you, hit that subscribe button. Royal Insider breakdowns like this drop every week, and you won't want to miss what's coming. Here's where the story takes a turn that surprises some people. Because while William is closing one door, he is simultaneously and very deliberately opening another. The Middleton family. Kate's family. Carol, Michael, Pippa, James. The family that came from nowhere by royal standards, middle class, self-made. No aristocratic lineage, no centuries-old titles, and somehow found themselves woven into the very fabric of the British monarchy. For years, The Middletons were politely tolerated but privately looked down upon by certain factions within the royal establishment. The whispers were real. Too common. Too commercial. Too eager. Carol Middleton, in particular, was a target of barely concealed snobbery from courtiers and commentators who believed she was using her daughter's marriage to climb a ladder she hadn't earned the right to touch. William never forgot that either. He watched the press mock his mother-in-law. He watched the institution treat Kate's family as acceptable but never quite welcome. And he watched Kate, strong, gracious, endlessly composed, smile through all of it without complaint. Now William is making something very clear. The Middletons are family. Not tolerated guests. Not background figures. Family. Sources report that Carol and Michael Middleton have been increasingly present at royal properties. That family gatherings now include Kate's siblings in ways that feel intentional rather than incidental. That William has quietly communicated, in a language of access and invitation that the royal world understands, that the Middletons have a place here. Permanently. This matters for several reasons. First, it is a direct and unmistakable contrast to his treatment of Camilla's relatives. The message is binary. These people are in, those people are out. Second, it tells us something profound about how William defines family. Not by blood, not by title, by loyalty, by values, by who showed up for Kate, and by extension, for him, when the weight of royal life became almost unbearable. The Middletons showed up. Every time, during the early years of the marriage, when the press was brutal, during the years when royal life felt suffocating, during Kate's illness, her cancer diagnosis, her long recovery, the terrifying months when the world held its breath, Carol Middleton was there. Quietly, steadily, without cameras, without statements, without any of the performance that royal family dynamics so often demand. William saw it all, and now he's repaying it in the only currency that truly matters inside the palace walls. Access. Trust. Welcome. This story isn't just about two families. It never was. What we are watching, if we look closely enough, is a power struggle that has been building for years. A generational war between two visions of what the British monarchy should be, who it should serve, who it should protect, and who gets to stand at the center of it. On one side, the old guard, the courtiers who served Charles for decades, the advisors who helped Camilla navigate her path from controversial mistress to queen consort, the establishment figures who believe the monarchy works best when it maintains its traditions, its hierarchies, its carefully managed distances from anything too modern or too emotional. On the other side, William, who watched the institution destroy his mother. William, who sat with Harry in the back of that car as children, following Diana's coffin through London streets while the whole world wept and the palace issued cold, distant statements about protocol. William, who swore, silently, privately, but absolutely, that when his time came, he would do things differently. The ban on Camilla's relatives isn't just personal. It is strategic. It is William drawing a line between the old world and the new one he intends to build. He is signaling to everyone inside that institution, every courtier, every advisor, every establishment figure who thinks they know how this monarchy should run, that the rules are changing. He's the one who decides who gets access now. Not tradition, not precedent, not the quiet arrangements made by other people in other eras. Him. Royal historians have noted that this kind of assertiveness is rare in heirs before they formally take the throne. Most future monarchs spend their pre-reign years deferring, accommodating, biding their time. William is not doing that. He is, in the careful but unmistakable language of palace politics, already acting like a king. And the old guard is deeply, deeply unsettled by it, because they know what it means when a future monarch starts drawing his own boundaries before the crown is even on his head. It means that when the crown does arrive, those boundaries will only get harder and more defined. The people inside those boundaries are safe. The people outside them are not. Don't forget to drop a comment below. Do you think William is right to make these calls, or is he overstepping? The debate in the comment section gets real. The British press has a complicated relationship with this story. And honestly, they've earned the complication. For years, the tabloids and broadsheets alike misread William. They painted him as stiff, distant, reluctant, a man going through royal motions without the fire or the vision to truly lead. They compared him unfavorably to Harry, who was charismatic, spontaneous, magnetic in front of camera in ways that William never quite seemed to be. They were wrong. Not because Harry isn't all those things. He is. But because they confused style with substance. They were watching the performance when they should have been watching the chessboard. William wasn't being stiff. He was being strategic. He wasn't being distant. He was building a record, building allies, building a case quietly, methodically, without ever tipping his hand. Now the press is scrambling to catch up. The coverage of William's reported decisions around royal access has shifted dramatically in tone. Where once commentators might have framed his moves as controlling or stiff, they are now using different words. Decisive, authoritative, kingly. The Daily Mail, which has historically had a complex relationship with both William and the Middletons, has noted the apparent shift in palace dynamics with barely concealed admiration. Even commentators who spent years championing Camilla's place in the royal family, and there were many, have had to acknowledge the reality on the ground. William is setting the terms now, and those terms do not include automatic access for people whose loyalty he hasn't personally verified. What the press is still getting wrong, however, is the framing. Most outlets are treating this as a drama, a soap opera of family tensions and royal feuds. But if you watch it through a different lens, it looks less like drama and more like governance. William is not throwing a tantrum. He is establishing a court. His court, with his values at the center. That's not gossip. That's history being made in real time. The press will eventually figure that out. The ones who do will have the best access when William's reign formally begins. The ones who keep treating it like a reality show will find themselves looking in from the outside, much like Camilla's relatives are doing right now. It would be a mistake, a serious, fundamental mistake, to look at all of this and see only William. Because behind every one of these decisions, woven through the strategy and the signals and the careful repositioning of alliances, there is Kate, Catherine, Princess of Wales, the woman who was told, for years, that she was lucky to be there, that she should be grateful, that her family was tolerated rather than celebrated, that she came from the wrong background, the wrong class, the wrong kind of world. Kate never argued. She never made speeches or gave interviews pushing back on the snobbery. She did something far more powerful. She showed them what she was made of. Year after year, engagement after engagement, crisis after crisis, she showed up with a grace and a steel that eventually became impossible to dismiss. Her illness, and what came after, changed something inside the palace. When Kate announced her cancer diagnosis, when the public outpouring of love and grief and support was overwhelming and undeniable, it shifted the internal dynamics in ways that are still being felt. People inside the institution saw, perhaps for the first time with complete clarity, exactly how much the public loved her. Not William, not the crown, her. And that changed William's hand. Because when the public loves your wife that deeply, and your wife's family showed up for her in ways that the institution failed to do, and your wife is also your closest advisor and the person whose judgment you trust above anyone else's, then her family becomes your priority. Simple, unambiguous. Sources close to the couple suggest that Kate has had quiet but significant influence over the repositioning of these family dynamics. Not in a manipulative way. Nothing about Kate reads as manipulation, but in the way that a person who has earned trust and demonstrated wisdom naturally influences the decisions of the person who loves them. William listens to Kate, and Kate, apparently, is done pretending that Camilla's extended circle deserves the same warmth as the family that stood by her through everything. Subscribe if you want the full picture. This channel covers what the mainstream press glosses over, and there's a lot more of this story still to come. Let's step back from the personal for a moment and look at the institutional landscape. Because what William is doing has consequences that stretch far beyond family feelings and royal residences. He is, piece by piece, rebuilding the internal architecture of the British monarchy. Think about what that actually means. The monarchy is not just a family. It is an institution with a staff of hundreds, a protocol system built over centuries, informal networks of power and influence that have existed for generations, and a deeply entrenched sense of how things are done. Changing any part of that system is hard. Changing it while the current monarch is still alive? Unprecedented in the modern era. And yet, William appears to be doing exactly that. The access decisions, who comes to which residence, who attends which private gathering, whose presence is actively encouraged versus quietly discouraged, are decisions that cascade through the system. They tell staff who matters. They tell courtiers who has the future king's ear. They tell the broader establishment where the power is actually flowing. By elevating the Middletons and sidelining Camilla's family, William is doing more than resolving a personal conflict. He is telling the institution who he is. He is establishing a culture, one that values loyalty and demonstrated commitment over inherited proximity. That is a profound shift from how the monarchy has historically operated. Historically, access was determined by bloodline, by aristocratic standing, by the slow accumulation of establishment credentials. William is proposing something closer to a meritocracy of loyalty. You get access not because of who your parents are, but because of what you have done, how you have shown up, and whether your values align with the future he is trying to build. Historians will debate whether this is revolutionary or simply pragmatic, but they will not be able to debate whether it is happening. It clearly is, and the ripple effects are already being felt. Certain courtiers who align themselves closely with the old Camilla-adjacent power structures are reportedly finding their advice less sought after. Others, those who have demonstrated personal loyalty to William and Kate, are finding themselves increasingly central to planning and decision-making. The court is reforming. Quietly, systematically, unmistakably. William's court. We have spent a long time in this video examining what William did. Now let's talk about what it reveals about who he is and who he is becoming. Because this decision, stripped of all its royal complexity, is fundamentally about identity. About a man who spent his childhood watching his parents' marriage tear itself, and him apart. About a son who buried his mother at 15 and carried that grief into adulthood in ways that never fully left him. About a prince who spent decades being told what he could and couldn't do, who he should and shouldn't trust, where he belonged and where he didn't. William is 42 years old. He is no longer the grieving boy in that car behind his mother's coffin. He is not the uncertain young prince trying to navigate an institution that often felt as cold and unmovable as stone. He is a man who has done the work, who has watched and waited and learned, who has built a marriage of genuine partnership with a woman he loves and trusts, who has raised 3 children in a royal environment while fighting to give them something his own childhood never quite had. Stability, warmth, the feeling that home is actually safe. And he has decided, finally, irrevocably, that he will not allow people into his home, his family space, his children's world, unless he trusts them completely. That is not arrogance. That is not a power trip. That is a father, a husband, a man who has seen what happens when trust is misplaced and proximity is extended too carelessly inside these walls. He is drawing the circle, and he is drawing it with full awareness of what it means, what it costs, and what it protects. Camilla's relatives are outside that circle, not because of who they are necessarily, but because William has determined they do not fit the vision, the values, and the tight inner world he is building. The Middletons are inside it, because they have proven in the quiet, unglamorous, unsexy way that actually matters, that they show up, they love Kate, they support the family without agenda, and they can be trusted with the most precious things William has. History will judge whether these decisions were right, whether they served the monarchy well, whether they helped or hindered the institution's long-term survival. But history will not be able to say he was passive. It will not be able to say he let others make his choices. It will not be able to say he failed to protect the people he loved. William made a decision, a clean, final, deliberate decision. And in doing so, he gave us the clearest picture we have ever had of the king he intends to be. Not the king tradition made for him, the king he made for himself. If this video gave you something to think about, share it with someone who follows the royals. The conversation around William's future reign is just getting started, and this channel will be here for every chapter of it. Subscribe, hit the bell, and we'll see you in the next one.